Ever get that nagging feeling like your body's just not quite right?
Hmm.
Maybe it's, persistent fatigue or those random aches that sort of pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah, happens to a lot of people.
Sometimes these seemingly unrelated little health whispers can actually be signals pointing to something deeper, more fundamental going on inside. And that's precisely where our exploration takes us today into the surprisingly complex world of the gut barrier.
That's right. It's easy to think of your gut as just being about digestion, but it's so much more than that. It's home to a really sophisticated and crucial defense system, kind of a frontline protector that's constantly working to keep us healthy, often without us even realizing it.
An unsung hero almost.
Totally. So today, we're going to take a closer look at this, our goal, to really understand the gut barrier, what it is, what can weaken it, and, most importantly, what you can do to support its strength. We've done a pretty deep dive into a range of information here.
Yeah.
Foundational stuff, details on LPS, leaky gut syndrome, practical guides on support and healing, the gut-brain connection, the immune link, all the way up to recent findings and even some controversies.
Right.
And we're going to try and synthesize all of this into clear, actionable insights for you without, getting totally lost in the weeds.
Okay, great. So let's get right into it. This sophisticated security system, the
Yeah.
gut barrier. When we talk about it, what exactly are we looking at physically?
Well, picture a really smart, very selective security gate lining your entire intestinal tract. That's kind of the essence of the gut barrier. Its
Yeah.
main job is to be highly discerning. It lets the essential nutrients from your food pass into your bloodstream.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff. While at the same time, it keeps potentially harmful things like bacteria, toxins, undigested food bits, safely contained inside the gut.
Okay, so it's not just like one simple wall doing all this work, is it? I remember reading about multiple layers.
You're spot on. It's definitely a multi-layered defense system. It's not just one thing. So the first line of defense is actually the microbiota.
The gut bugs.
Exactly. That huge community of trillions of mostly beneficial bacteria, viruses, fungi living in your gut. Think of them as like a helpful neighborhood watch. They're constantly competing with harmful microbes for food and space. We call that competitive exclusion.
Oh, okay.
And what's also really key is that these good microbes, they actually produce essential vitamins that our bodies need. They're actively helping us out.
Wow, okay, so the good bugs are fighting off bad ones and making vitamins. What's the next layer then?
Right behind them, you've got the mucus layer.
Mhm.
Imagine this thick, sort of jelly-like coating that blankets the entire lining.
Sticky stuff.
Yeah, very sticky. It acts like flypaper, basically trapping pathogens and stopping them from even getting close to our actual cells.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just passive, it's active. It contains antimicrobial proteins and antibodies like its own little built-in arsenal.
That sounds pretty robust, a physical and a chemical barrier, but there's still like a wall of cells underneath that, right?
Exactly. That's the epithelial cell layer. Now, this is a single layer of cells, but they're packed together super tightly like bricks in a wall. And what's absolutely crucial here are these things called tight junctions. They act like protein zippers connecting the cells.
The zippers, okay.
Yeah, and these junctions are the gatekeepers, highly selective. They only let specific molecules through. Think of it like airport security. Nutrients with the right passports, they get through. Anything potentially harmful, blocked.
That's a great analogy.
And this layer is incredibly dynamic. Get this, it regenerates itself really quickly, like every 4 to 5 days.
Whoa, seriously? That fast?
Yeah, it's constant renewal. It really highlights how hard the body works to maintain this barrier. It also suggests, that even small positive changes you make could have a relatively quick impact.
That's encouraging. And I noticed there are different types of these epithelial cells, right? They all have specific jobs.
Precisely. You've got the enterocytes. They're the main workers doing most of the nutrient absorption. Then there are goblet cells. Their job is to secrete that protective mucus we just talked about.
Got it.
Deeper down, you find Paneth cells making antimicrobial peptides, helping keep the microbial balance right. You also have enteroendocrine cells. They release hormones, controlling things like digestion and appetite, super important. And finally, M cells. They're specialized for immune surveillance, kind of sampling what's in the gut and showing it to the immune system.
Wow, a whole team.
Definitely. And this lining isn't just in one spot. It runs all the way from the stomach. It's most abundant in the small intestine, where most absorption happens, and continues right into the large intestine.
So these layers are all working to keep the bad stuff out. But what happens if something does manage to sneak past that cell wall?
Ah, good question. That's where the fourth layer, comes in the immune layer. It's also called the lamina propria. This is basically a layer of connective tissue right underneath the epithelial cells, and it's packed with specialized immune cells.
Ready to fight.
Exactly. They're constantly on patrol, ready to detect any threats that might breach the barrier and then mount a targeted immune response.
Okay. So when all these layers are working properly, humming along nicely, what are the key benefits? Why is a healthy gut barrier so incredibly crucial for us?
Well, it's fundamental for really several key reasons. First, as we've been saying, it's our main protection against infections and chronic inflammation. By keeping the bad stuff contained, it helps maintain a balanced immune response, not overreacting, not underreacting.
Right.
Second, it's obviously essential for healthy digestion, making sure we actually absorb the nutrients we need from our food.
Thanks.
And third, it plays a huge role in the gut-brain axis, that fascinating, two-way communication street between your gut and your brain.
Ah, yes, the gut-brain connection. We'll definitely circle back to that. But this naturally leads us to that term many people hear, leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah,
What exactly is that? Why is it a problem?
right. So leaky gut syndrome, or what scientists usually call increased intestinal permeability, it happens when those tight junctions, those protein zippers between the epithelial cells get damaged and, well, they loosen up.
You become leaky.
Pretty much. And when that happens, stuff that should stay inside the gut, things like toxins, microbes, maybe undigested food particles, can leak out into the bloodstream. This triggers an immune response, and it can set off this cascade of inflammation throughout your whole body.
Okay.
We even see something called metabolic endotoxemia when LPS, that's a piece of certain bacteria, leaks out. That really ramps up inflammation.
Okay, so now we understand the barrier and what happens when it's compromised. Let's talk about what actually causes the damage. What are the main culprits in our modern lives that can harm this sophisticated system?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are quite a few common factors. Poor diet is a really big one.
No surprise there.
Right. Diets high in processed foods, loads of sugar, too much alcohol, they can all directly damage the barrier's integrity. Then you have infections, gut pathogens, bacteria, viruses. They can attack and weaken the lining.
Makes sense.
Certain medications are also implicated. Things like NSAIDs, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and antibiotics, especially broad-spectrum ones, can disrupt that delicate gut microbiome balance and impair the barrier.
And what about stress? I hear that mentioned a lot.
Absolutely. Chronic stress can take a significant toll. It can actually alter gut motility, how things move through, and increase inflammation right there in the gut. It's a powerful factor.
You mentioned LPS leaking out. Can we dig into that a bit more?
Yeah.
What exactly is LPS, and why is it so bad if it escapes the gut?
Sure. LPS, or lipopolysaccharide. It's basically a toxic molecule that's part of the outer membrane of certain types of bacteria called gram-negative bacteria. They're common in our gut.
An endotoxin, right?
Exactly, an endotoxin. It's inside the bacteria, but gets released when they die, or, crucially, when the gut barrier is leaky. So when LPS leaks into the bloodstream through that damaged lining, your body sees it as a major danger signal, like red alert. And this triggers a really strong immune reaction. It leads to this systemic, kind of low-level but chronic inflammation throughout the body.
And it becomes a cycle.
It can, yeah. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. Leaky gut lets LPS escape, which causes inflammation, and that inflammation can then further damage the gut lining, making it even leakier.
And this systemic low-level inflammation, it sounds like it can be tied to a whole bunch of different health problems. I saw some stats linking it to obesity.
Absolutely. The research is pretty compelling there. LPS leakage is strongly linked to a range of metabolic issues. Think insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, especially that stubborn belly fat, visceral fat. It's also heavily implicated in inflammatory conditions like cardiovascular disease, various autoimmune disorders, inflammatory bowel diseases.
Like Crohn's or colitis.
Exactly. And the effects aren't just physical. They can reach the brain, too, potentially contributing to neurological issues like depression, brain fog, fatigue, even joint pain. Some studies are quite striking. One mentioned compromised gut barriers in maybe 67% of people with IBD. Another suggested high-fat, high-sugar meals could increase LPS absorption by like 3 times. Really shows the diet impact.
It's quite sobering how many things can actually damage that epithelial lining specifically. We've touched on diet, meds, stress. Anything else key for listeners to know?
Yes, absolutely. Let's break it down a bit more. Dietary-wise, it's not just sugar and alcohol. Processed foods often contain additives that can be directly irritating, and a diet consistently low in fiber that basically starves your good gut bugs, the ones that help maintain the barrier.
Right, they need fuel.
They do. Medication-wise, besides NSAIDs and antibiotics, things like corticosteroids and even some chemotherapy drugs can negatively impact the gut lining. Biologically, beyond acute infections, there's dysbiosis, that imbalance in your gut microbes, maybe after antibiotics or just from long-term poor diet. That imbalance itself weakens the barrier.
And lifestyle.
Lifestyle is huge, chronic stress, as we said, but also lack of quality sleep, nutritional deficiencies, not getting enough key vitamins and minerals, and maybe surprisingly, excessive, really intense exercise can sometimes stress the gut lining too.
Wow, even too much exercise.
In some cases, yes, particularly ultra-endurance stuff without proper support. Often it's the combination.
Mm.
Several of these factors piling up at once, overwhelming the gut's ability to repair itself.
Okay, this all paints a slightly concerning picture. But the good news, surely, is that there are things we can do to support a healthy gut barrier, right? Let's shift to building back that wall.
Absolutely. That's the encouraging part. The gut barrier is remarkably resilient. It often has a significant capacity to heal if you give it the right support. A cornerstone is simply eating whole foods. Focus your diet on a wide variety of fiber-rich vegetables, fruits, legumes.
Feed the good bugs again.
Exactly. That provides the fuel for them to thrive and make those beneficial short-chain fatty acids we'll talk more about. And incorporating fermented foods, think yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, can directly add more beneficial microbes to your gut ecosystem.
What about supplements? Are there specific ones that are particularly helpful here?
Yeah, certain supplements can definitely play a supportive role. Prebiotics, the fiber that feeds good bacteria, and probiotics, the good bacteria themselves, are often recommended.
Makes sense.
Ensuring you have adequate levels of key nutrients like vitamin D, zinc, and omega-3 fatty acids is also important. They have diverse roles in gut health and reducing inflammation. And L-glutamine, that's an amino acid, and it's actually a primary fuel source for the cells lining your intestines, the enterocytes. So it can be particularly helpful for repair.
Fuel for the wall itself.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's not just about what we eat or supplement with, is it? Our overall lifestyle seems critical too.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Lifestyle changes are huge. Managing stress effectively, whether through mindfulness, meditation, yoga, just getting out in nature, whatever works for you, can have a really substantial positive impact.
That mind-gut connection again.
Definitely. And consistently getting enough quality sleep each night is also essential. That's when your body does a lot of its repair work, including regenerating that gut lining, that knot in your stomach when you're stressed.
Yeah.
That might be having a real physical effect.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned some specific gut-healing foods earlier. Can we unpack those a little?
Sure. Things like bone broth often come up. It's rich in collagen and amino acids like glycine and proline, which can be building blocks for the gut lining. As we said, fermented foods are great for introducing beneficial bacteria.
Diversity is key there.
Yes, variety is good. And a wide range of fiber-rich plants provides those prebiotics, the fuel for the good bacteria to flourish and produce those incredibly beneficial short-chain fatty acids.
Okay. And digging deeper into supplements for specifically supporting that epithelial layer.
Right, for more targeted support. L-glutamine, as mentioned, directly nourishes those intestinal cells. Zinc is really vital for maintaining the integrity of those tight junctions, helping keep the barrier zipped up.
Okay.
Vitamin D plays a big role in regulating the immune response within the gut. Omega-3 fatty acids help dampen inflammation, which is key because inflammation damages the lining. And, of course, targeted probiotic and prebiotic supplements can be very helpful in restoring and maintaining a healthy microbial balance.
And on the lifestyle front, any specific habits we should really focus on avoiding or maybe incorporating to protect that epithelial layer?
Definitely. We've hit on stress management. Finding ways to relax and unwind is key. Actively avoiding heavily processed foods, especially those with long lists of artificial additives, is really important.
Read the labels.
Yeah, basically. And being mindful about limiting unnecessary medications, particularly NSAIDs and antibiotics if they aren't essential, can make a big difference in preserving that gut environment.
Our sources also flagged some specific dietary triggers for leaky gut, and conversely, some solutions. What stood out there?
Yes, a few key dietary culprits were highlighted. Excessive fructose, especially from things like high fructose corn syrup found in sodas and many processed foods, can feed less desirable gut bacteria and disrupt the balance, ultimately weakening those tight junctions.
Not just fruit then, but the processed stuff mainly.
Primarily the added concentrated fructose, yeah. Then industrial seed oils like canola, soybean, corn, sunflower oils, they're very high in omega-6 fatty acids. When consumed in large amounts relative to omega-3s, they can promote inflammation. Plus, they can oxidize easily, potentially damaging gut tissues.
Okay.
And gluten. For some people, not just those with celiac disease, gluten can trigger the release of a protein called zonulin. And zonulin's job is basically to open up those tight junctions, increasing permeability.
Ah, interesting. Even without celiac.
Potentially, yes. It's an area of ongoing research and some debate, but the mechanism exists.
And on the flip side, what about dietary and lifestyle solutions highlighted for healing?
Okay, healing strategies.
Yeah.
Focusing on short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, is critical. Remember, these are made when good bacteria ferment fiber.
Like butyrate.
Exactly. Butyrate is a key one. SCFAs are fuel for your colon cells. They strengthen tight junctions, reduce gut inflammation, promote good bacteria growth, and support immune tolerance. So, fiber is crucial for making them. Saturated fats from natural whole food sources, think butter, ghee, coconut oil, especially MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, can actually support gut lining health and aid digestion.
That might surprise some people.
It might, but the context is important. Natural sources, not processed trans fats.
Hmm.
Interestingly, even LDL cholesterol, often seen as bad, plays a role in binding up endotoxins like LPS and helping with tissue repair.
Wow. All right.
We also need the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K for various transport functions and overall gut health. The sources mention allulose, a type of sugar with prebiotic effects that might help protect the barrier and reduce inflammation. And just emphasizing again the importance of various types of fiber, inulin, pectin, beta-glucans, resistant starch, all fuel for good microbes. And of course, probiotics.
Okay, lots of tools in the toolbox there. Now, this connection between the gut and the brain, it keeps popping up. Can you explain a bit more about this gut-brain axis? Why is it so significant?
It's truly fascinating. The gut-brain axis is this complex bidirectional communication system. It involves several pathways running both ways. You've got the vagus nerve, a major nerve highway, providing direct, rapid communication between the gut and brain.
Like a data cable.
Sort of, yeah.
Hmm.
Then you have hormones. For example, something like 90% of your serotonin, a key mood neurotransmitter, is actually produced in your gut.
90%. Wow.
Yeah, quite amazing. The microbiome itself is a huge player. The gut bacteria produce neuroactive compounds that can influence brain health, mood, even behavior.
The bugs are talking to our brain.
In a way, yes. And finally, immune signals. Inflammation starting in the gut can trigger inflammation in the brain, partly by affecting the blood-brain barrier.
Okay, speaking of barriers,
Yeah.
we also have the blood-brain barrier. How is that different from the gut barrier? What's its job?
Right, the blood-brain barrier, BBB. Another crucial protective barrier, but this one specifically guards the brain. Its main job is to stop harmful stuff circulating in your blood, toxins, pathogens, inflammatory molecules from getting into the very sensitive brain environment, while at the same time selectively letting essential things like oxygen and nutrients pass through.
So, similar principle, different location.
Exactly. Structurally, it's made of tightly packed endothelial cells lining the brain's blood vessels, also zipped together with tight junctions, plus support cells called astrocytes and pericytes that help regulate it. Think super high security for your brain.
And just like a leaky gut, can you have a leaky brain? What does that mean?
Yes, that's the concept. Leaky brain refers to a state where that blood-brain barrier becomes compromised, more permeable than it should be. This allows things that shouldn't cross inflammatory molecules, toxins, maybe even immune cells, to get from the bloodstream into the brain tissue itself.
And what kinds of things might cause the BBB to become leaky? Similar culprits to the gut.
There's definitely overlap. Chronic inflammation is a big one, whether it stems from the gut, infections, or autoimmune issues. It can damage the BBB structure. A leaky gut itself is a major contributor by increasing that systemic inflammation and allowing stuff like LPS into the blood, which then challenges the BBB.
Big connection again.
Yep. Chronic stress and a poor diet high in processed foods, sugar, unhealthy fats can also disrupt those BBB tight junctions. And some environmental factors like air pollution, heavy metals, pesticides might also play a role.
So if someone did have a compromised BBB, a leaky brain, what might they experience? What are the potential symptoms?
Well, the symptoms can be quite varied and sometimes vague, which makes it tricky. On the cognitive side, you might see persistent brain fog, difficulty concentrating, memory issues. Energy problems are common too, chronic fatigue, feeling unrefreshed even after sleep. Some people experience increased pain and sensitivity, like more frequent headaches or finding themselves more sensitive to light or sound, and noticeable mood changes, increased anxiety, or symptoms that look like depression.
It really sounds like leaky gut and leaky brain could feed into each other, like a loop. Is that how it works?
Exactly. It can absolutely become a vicious cycle, unfortunately. Inflammation starting in the gut leads to inflammatory molecules and toxins like LPS getting into the blood. This systemic inflammation travels to the brain, weakens the BBB, makes it leakier.
And the other way around.
Yep. Stress or issues originating in the brain can impact the gut via that gut-brain axis, potentially contributing to gut inflammation and leakiness down there. So it's definitely a two-way street. Problems in one area can worsen problems in the other.
Are there specific supplements or lifestyle choices that are thought to be particularly good for supporting the blood-brain barrier itself?
Yes, there are things thought to be supportive. Certain supplements with strong anti-inflammatory properties, like curcumin from turmeric and resveratrol found in grapes, are often mentioned. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially the DHA component, seem important for the structure and integrity of the BBB membranes and tight junctions. Supplements that support energy production in brain cells, like CoQ10 and acetyl L-carnitine, might also help maintain overall brain health and resilience.
And lifestyle.
Lifestyle is key here too. Prioritizing consistent, quality sleep is vital. The brain does a lot of cleanup during sleep, which involves the BBB. Effective stress management helps lower cortisol, which can harm the BBB. Regular aerobic exercise boosts blood flow to the brain. And of course, minimizing exposure to toxins, limiting alcohol, not smoking, reducing exposure to pollutants where possible. It's also worth noting the BBB can be physically disrupted, like actual damage, but it can also be functionally altered even if it looks intact. Maybe how it responds to immune signals gets messed up.
Fascinating. Okay, our sources also really hammered home the powerful partnership between the gut microbiome and our immune system. Can you elaborate on that relationship?
Oh, it's absolutely central. The gut is basically immune system headquarters. It houses something like 70 to 80% of all our immune cells.
That much. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. This gut-associated lymphoid tissue, GLT, is this massive immune surveillance system, constantly monitoring the gut environment. And right from birth, our gut microbes are critical in training our developing immune system. They teach it how to tell the difference between harmful invaders and harmless stuff like food or beneficial bacteria.
So early life exposure is really important.
Incredibly important for developing healthy immune tolerance and potentially preventing things like allergies and autoimmune issues later on.
So it sounds like it's all about maintaining a healthy balance in that microbiome, right?
Yeah.
What happens when that balance goes off kilter?
Exactly. Balance, or eubiosis, is key. A diverse, balanced microbiome supports a strong, well-regulated immune system. Good digestion keeps inflammation low. But when that balance gets disrupted, we call that dysbiosis. Maybe less beneficial or harmful bacteria overgrow, beneficial ones decline. That sends confusing signals to the immune system.
And that can lead to problems.
It can, yeah. It might lead to inappropriate immune responses, maybe contributing to autoimmune reactions, chronic inflammation throughout the body, or even just weakened defenses against actual infections.
How do these trillions of gut microbes actually talk to our immune cells day to day?
It's pretty sophisticated. They communicate in several ways. They produce loads of metabolites. Those short-chain fatty acids like butyrate are key signaling molecules, but also things like bile acids, neurotransmitters. These directly interact with immune cells.
The chemical signals.
Right. Immune cells themselves release cytokines, which are like chemical messengers carrying info back and forth between microbes in the immune system. And immune cells have these pattern recognition receptors on their surface. Think of them like sensors that can identify different types of microbes, allowing for a tailored response.
So when this partnership breaks down dysbiosis, leaky gut other, what are the potential consequences for our health?
Well, when things go wrong and you get dysbiosis combined with a leaky gut, it can trigger that widespread inflammation as toxins like LPS and other microbial bits get into the bloodstream. And this chronic inflammation is linked to or can worsen a whole host of issues. Autoimmune conditions, food sensitivities, skin problems like eczema or acne, even mental health symptoms can be impacted.
Okay, so bringing it back to what we can actually do, what are the key strategies for supporting this crucial link between our gut microbes and our immune system?
Well, the good news is the strategies overlap a lot with supporting the gut barrier itself. Eating for your bugs is number one.
Fiber.
Pretty much. Yeah, a diet rich in diverse, high-fiber foods, fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, plus regularly including fermented foods. And equally important is avoiding the stuff that feeds the bad guys heavily processed foods, excess added sugars. Considering probiotics and prebiotics, either from food or supplements, can help nudge the balance in the right direction. Managing stress is absolutely critical, as chronic stress really messes with both your gut bacteria and your immune system directly.
And sleep.
And getting enough quality sleep. It supports both microbial diversity and optimal immune function. They're all interconnected.
Gut health research definitely seems like it's moving incredibly fast right now. What are some of the really significant recent findings and maybe some ongoing controversies, especially related to the gut barrier?
Oh, it's an incredibly dynamic field for sure. New insights are popping up constantly. We're seeing more and more evidence that the gut barrier's influence goes way beyond digestion. It impacts the immune system, liver function, brain health, skin, overall metabolism.
It's connected to everything.
It really seems that way. Research is actively looking at its role in a huge range of diseases: non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, IBD, food allergies, even triggering autoimmune flares. There are also some really interesting potential therapies being investigated that target the barrier directly. Things like larazotide acetate, aiming to tighten those junctions. Fecal microbiota transplants, FMT, for restoring microbial balance in specific cases. And looking at postbiotics and symbiotics.
What are postbiotics?
Those are the beneficial compounds produced by probiotics, like SCFAs. So giving the end product directly. Researchers are also hunting for better lab markers to actually measure gut permeability reliably.
But there's still some debate around the term leaky gut syndrome itself, right? In the mainstream medical world.
Yes, that's a really important point of clarification. There's general scientific agreement that gut permeability can increase in certain diseases that's measurable. However, the mainstream medical establishment is often quite critical of leaky gut syndrome, used as this kind of standalone catch-all diagnosis for a huge array of symptoms.
Why the criticism?
Well, the argument is often that the term is used vaguely and often without strong scientific proof that this increased permeability is the primary cause of all the conditions it gets linked to. Major medical bodies point out the lack of robust evidence for it as a distinct disease entity causing, say, fatigue or joint pain in isolation. Increased permeability is real, but calling it leaky gut syndrome as a widespread diagnosis is controversial.
Okay, so when we talk about leaky gut, what parts are pretty well established scientifically versus what's still debated or maybe lacks strong evidence?
Right. What's well established, gut permeability definitely increases in conditions like celiac disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, certain gut infections. We understand the role of proteins like zonulin in regulating tight junctions, and there's promising research into drugs targeting the barrier.
And the debated parts.
What's more debated is the idea that leaky gut is the root cause of a very broad spectrum of unrelated conditions like depression, general obesity, chronic fatigue syndrome on its own. Testing for things like zonulin isn't standardized everywhere, and results can be inconsistent. FMT, while amazing for C. diff infections, is still experimental for most other gut-related issues. And many commercial leaky gut tests or herbal cleanses lack rigorous scientific validation.
So navigating the hype is important.
Very important. Focus on the established science.
Okay, so for our listeners wanting to support their gut barrier health based on the evidence, what are the key reliable recommendations to focus on?
Let's boil it down. The most solid advice is prioritize a gut-friendly diet. Rich and diverse fiber from whole plants, include fermented foods, limit ultra-processed stuff. Avoid known barrier damagers, chronic excessive alcohol, smoking, unnecessary NSAIDs or antibiotics. Practice effective stress management consistently. It matters. Consider probiotics and prebiotics to support a healthy microbial balance and SCFA production. And address any potential underlying nutrient deficiencies, but ideally do this with guidance from a healthcare provider who can test, not just guess.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive, the gut barrier. It's clearly this incredibly dynamic system with just massive effects on our overall health. It's really eye-opening.
Absolutely. It's not just a passive wall. It's an active, intelligent interface interacting with everything. Understanding its functions and what influences it is genuinely powerful for taking informed care of yourself.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, considering this constant, intricate dance between your gut barrier, your environment, and your internal state, how might paying closer, maybe more mindful attention to your own unique body signals offer further personalized insights into your well-being? It's certainly something compelling to think about as we keep learning more about this vital part of us.